Well, good morning, everybody. That was Barrio Latino, Dream About You. We'll get back to that later, but right now it's time, because it's 11 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, for 360 Performance. I'm your host, Laura Whiteman, better known as Coach. Reluctant to call me doctor, but that's also a truism. We're here with a great show today with two guests that I'm more than just casually familiar with. They are two athletes that have moved on into other careers. My first today is Austin Dunstan, a podcaster of the show, creator actually and host of the show, The Common Fan. We'll talk to Austin just in a minute here about the show and the details of that. Our second guest that will come in at the half hour is Griggs Crawford. And Griggs I think he still fashions himself an athlete, but he was a more formal athlete in high school as a pitcher. Threw some really great innings for me. And when he comes on with us, he'll see this wonderful hat that I've got here with the Fairview Knights. We'll bring that on so he can remind himself that he is really old and that I will always be older, which I'm sure he'll remind me of. But that being said, we're here to talk about us versus them. And what that means is there's a lot of energy in our world today that is challenging the attention span, the productivity of not just our athletes in competitive spaces, but everybody. I don't know about you, but I wake up some days with an edge on. I'm going, what the hell? I got anger issues and I don't even have a therapist yet. That's not right. So we're going to keep moving today with our show, and we talk every week about a mindset moment. And this week's mindset moment came to me from Stephen Covey, and it's appropriate that the backdrop is the Capitol building, because the mindset moment is effective leadership is putting first things first. Boy, I wish people would learn about that a little bit more. And effective management is discipline carrying that out. Boy, those are some lessons we could be applying today, right? Whether it's on the ball field, in the gymnasium, or maybe actually in the halls of that wonderful building that's pictured there, the Capitol building. We've got a lot of stuff that's going on that creates an us versus them kind of positioning. So as we talk about that, I want to remind you of this particular quote as well, that in the days of religious persecution and challenges around the world globally, it's a timeless event. Going way back to the Maccabees when the Philistines were attacking them. Now look, I'm not trying to get religious on you, far be it from me to do that. Some people call me a heathen. But there was a time in their lives when the light that they needed during the evening hours was going to wane away because they didn't have enough oil. But they had the faith. I'm hoping that we have the faith as well, so that we are constantly looking for excellence regardless of the conditions. And we are repeatedly what we do, and excellence then is not an act, it's a habit. So says, look at that, Aristotle. That's how far back it goes. So these kind of concepts are timeless. They're principles, and that's what makes them principles, because they are timeless. The principles of gravity. I take a pen, I throw it in the air, it falls down. And guess what? If I was in China, it would do the same thing. Those are principles. We need to be aware of the principles that drive us and motivate us to do the right things. Well, speaking of the right things, let's talk about, as it relates to our theme today, teamwork, unity. And in this picture shows, this is the All-Star game. And you see we have LeBron, we have Kev, we have James Harden. Well, guess what? There's a challenge for Mr. Harden. He's going to another team in New Jersey from Houston, because I think he wants to try to win, he's always been trying. He wants to win an NBA championship. So is he going to have that unity on that team of All-Stars? Because there's a triad of All-Stars, and Kevin is one of them, along with him, and I'll mention the third in a minute, because he's going to be an integral introduction on his contribution, because I'm going to say 2 of those 3 guys on New Jersey that are representing this triad of talent that's going to bring them an NBA championship, so they think. Their us versus them attitude might crop up its ugly head, because each one of these 3 guys have, let me say, they got a few sponsors between them, and sometimes their motives might be a little questionable. So Harden is on the Nets. That's happening, and hopefully it will be a 3 old guys win an NBA championship. I guess we'll wait and see, right? We'll see what happens with the health and well-being of that team. Now, I'm going to bring in Austin for a minute. And Austin, who is the 3rd person of that old guys trio for the Nets?
I believe you're referring to Kyrie Irving.
Yes, Mr. Irving, Mr. Shoeshine. He is an awesome representative of sponsorship and fights very hard for every single nickel that he gets from his sponsorship. I'm concerned for the New Jersey Nets, and that they will have a challenge between those 3 in what is their priority. Making sure that they represent for the team, that's the us, or represent for the them, which is the sponsorship and the money. Because I believe it gets in the way of their thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we see all the time, too. I mean, if we look at, even go over to the NFL, the Cleveland Browns have a star-studded team. They've got Kareem Hunt, they've got Nick Chubb, they have Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield. I mean, last year they were supposed to be, they were supposed to be the team, just clicking on all cylinders, and they weren't. But we look forward to this year, and it looks like they've kind of started to play as a team and put winning first instead of as individuals within that team. So I think that's why you're seeing more success, especially out of a team like the Cleveland Browns today.
And Austin, Cleveland Browns is a great example. And just remember that last week during their playoff win, it wasn't the number 1, it wasn't the number 2 WR, it was the number 3 WR that led in receptions, yardage, and TDs. And that is Higgins. Rashard Higgins. Hollywood Rashard Higgins. And once again, a Colorado State University graduate. But he bides his time, he's patient, and he delivers. So you're absolutely right. I think there are plenty enough distractions going around for everybody. And speaking of that, switching gears to the NCAA. And we haven't been more than 2 weeks away from the playoffs ending, national championships being stated, and they're grousing about how should we improve it? How should we take things away from the NCAA? And there's talk about what should those changes be, and the one that's the most often talked about the last 10 days has been, hey, make sure you don't schedule anything in conflict with the NFL. And that's money-based. That has nothing to do with the kids. That has nothing to do with the teams. So I'm very interested in what the future looks like, Austin. Tell me a little bit about what you think the NCAA is going to do as it relates to football playoffs going forward.
Well, I am very passionate about the college football playoff because, I'm from Tennessee, and college football is kind of king here. I'm an Arkansas Razorbacks fan, sadly, but I'm surrounded by Tennessee Volunteers fans and Alabama fans. So college football is really king, but, excuse me, the thing that is the common denominator between all college football fans, except for maybe Alabama, is that something has to change with the college football playoff. Because at this point in time, it's really just, they had the BCS championship when, it was just selected in a computer, maybe there was opinion based in it, and they went to the playoff. Well, now it's essentially just the BCS national championship expanded into a playoff. There is no incentive. You don't have to win your conference. You don't have to win your regular season games. You have to have a good schedule, but if you're at Alabama, if you're at Clemson, if you're in Ohio State and you have one loss, the odds of you still getting into that championship are very, very high. But if you're, a group of 5 schools, say like Cincinnati, and you have an undefeated regular season, apparently you're not going to get in. If there was ever a year for that to happen, it was going to be this year. So what I think has to change is the college football playoff at least has to be expanded. Everybody wants it expanded, as far as I'm concerned. And there has to be incentives to winning your conference championship. I'm a firm believer if you win, you have to win to get your way in automatically, in a sense. So maybe there's a conference championship tie-in with the Power Fives, and there's 3 left over where you can put a group of 5 in, and you can still get in those 2 Power 5 schools that didn't win their conference. That way everybody's in, but actually conference championships have a meaning now, and you can't just say, oh, well, I think this team's better than that team. They actually have to win to earn their way into that playoff.
Well, you've just defined another us versus them, because you are a contrarian to the popular opinion in that they want to reduce the number of playoff games, taking away the chance of other teams having even a hair of a chance, a breath of a chance, a whisper of a chance of getting in versus anybody else. So that, again, it plays to the Power 5, the more well-funded schools that have the money to get the 3 to 5 star players on their rosters. I think it's a shame for the benefit of the game, because too often, as you know, in watching football, intangibles tend to define key games, and the most unlikely of competitors win the contest when the emotions are running high. So maybe the exception might be Alabama. I don't know, but regardless of the game, I think Alabama always has a chance.
Right.
But you're a contrarian about it. Right now they're talking about the improvements to include fewer playoff games to narrow the field so they can process it quicker to the money. You know, the sponsorships, the ads, the TV rights, and so on and so on and so on. It's not for today's discussion, but you and I have talked about a future discussion we're going to have about what the NCAA is going to do if the Power 5 push for a separation of them out of the NCAA and creating their own conference league. So that being said, let's switch to another topic with a different ball, a rounder ball, and that's the NCAA's March Madness. And I have to put my alumni, my undergraduate alumni Iowa Hawkeyes up there because they've got the if not going to be the #1 player in the country, and that's Luka. He is number 55, the center for the Iowa Hawkeyes at 6'10", and he's there because I want to point out about what are you going to do to qualify for the NCAA? Because the same theme at the football is following into March Madness. Fewer teams. So how do we get in? And I don't mean fewer than 65. I mean there isn't going to be any of these runoff games to see if you get in, these marginalized teams or conferences. That's what they're talking about right now. So what's your take on that, Austin?
Man, well, my take is I'm always for more games. You know, I love sports. I love to watch them. If you're going to throw something on in the middle of March or, you know, even into May, and it's any sport, I'm going to sit down and watch it because that's just how I am. I think that reducing, you know, the teams that get in, it kind of takes away from the specialness that is March Madness, because you live for those Cinderella stories. Like a couple years back, I believe it was Loyola Chicago, and you know, the 16 UMBC, I believe, upsetting the #1 seed. You live for those times. I mean, those are things that don't happen very often, but when they do, it's almost, you know, magical, right? So I think it hurts in a sense to try to reduce, and I get what they're trying to do. You know, it's all about money. The NCAA absolutely loves them some money, man. However they can make a quick buck, they're going to. But it continues to hurt viewership and fanship as they continue to, you know, just work toward the money. They're going to have to eventually find a happy medium where they're also pleasing fans as well as getting their money.
Well, and regardless of what they do in the numbers, and I don't think this year is going to be the year they're going to reduce the numbers, but it's definitely the time they're going to discuss it, so that they have that discussion out there as this year's madness, and I say that in a uniform sort of way, madness court for anybody. But the format, once we get to the tournament play, may be different, mainly because of fans not in the stands and the difference in how you're going to participate in advertising, sponsorship, and just viewing it in a virtual streaming type of sense. So there's a lot of different format elements that I'm very curious about. Regretfully, the NCAA, they're only talking about the CDC and public health guidelines. as a way to establish some kind of criteria for format, but they're not talking about what most of us sports fans really want to look at, and that is, where is my team going to play in the brackets? And they've been, the only thing I've come close to finding out is they're bantering around about a finite number of sites around the country that become the gathering point for all of the teams. So maybe a half a dozen cities will gain a lot of income because all of the playoffs will be coming to them in that region.
Right. Yeah, I've seen where Indianapolis is in the mix. I'm not sure if they're confirmed that's where everything's going to be, but they're going to be a big part in it. And it's just going to be different. It's kind of creating a bubble for college, as we've seen, in the NBA, which it can work, but it's just different than in years past. And hopefully we're close to being able to get back to normal. But this isn't something new that we're seeing, because we've been dealing with this since early last year. So everybody's kind of accepted it. Personally, I just want to be able to see the March Madness. I mean, remember, it got canceled. I remember when it got canceled last year. It was devastating to everybody, because it's one of the best times to watch it is the best time to watch college basketball, and one of the best times to watch college sports in general. So I think as long as they can get it in somewhere and people can watch it, maybe even have a few fans in, I think people will be happy.
Well, and to your point earlier, for last year's final NCAA March Madness, there were Division II schools, because of the RPI, they got invited. And then it was canceled.
Right.
And Division II schools, the cycle with which they get a chance is long. It's a big distance for them from point in time to get there. So there's some very disappointed young men and women about being removed from that. Now, I don't think they're going to do that now, but Indianapolis is the site for the finals. That's where that's going to be, because they can control it, and they will have a regional tournament there. I don't know what teams will be pulled in, because some teams might have home field advantage or home court advantage, and they tend to stay away from that. But that may be out the window. But there's going to, I'm with you. I want to see it. I want to see it with a quality effort, and if there's any chance at all that I can be a fan in the stand, I want to be there.
Absolutely.
I want to be there for that, because basketball just jazzes me. I mean, I'm spoiled with football because I get to get on the field all the time.
Right.
But basketball, it's the atmosphere. It's just, and that's also a double-edged sword, because the atmosphere creates an environment that may not be as healthy as we'd like it to be. So, in our intros, the Truth Be Told is a segment. So here's a Truth Be Told. When we have unrest, it sells.
Yeah,
it's as much as we want to grouse about it and want it a different way, we are in fact talking about it. And if I had a bottle to show, and I'd be selling something, right? It's really something. So the other truth to be told is, in the times that we're talking about, in reducing the number of participants, that takes away the possibility of delivering the intangibles. The player or the team that surprises everybody in the stands and just outdistanced, like the Browns outdistancing the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first quarter by 28 points.
Man, that was wild.
Well, and oh my God, Roethlisberger, 4 turnovers just on him alone.
The first snap of the game was a snap over Roethlisberger's head into the end zone, and they pretty much gave Cleveland a 7-point head start.
Yeah, it was, and the offense didn't even touch the field.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So intangibles are a big part of what happens when there is adversity that needs to be dealt with. And I want to see them come out. I want to see the excitement of that.
Exactly. I agree with that one. I just want to say something real quick on that point. That's why there's the phrase any given Sunday. Because anybody can go out there and beat anybody on any given day. But if you take that away, exactly what you're saying there, you lose intangibles. They're essentially creating an outcome for you.
Yeah. It's, and that blends right into this next point about, with all the changes that are being prognosticated, and some are coming, there's no guessing anymore, is the fan going to be subject because of these rivalries and this competition to actually, and their desire for it, we get more pay-per-view events. I thought boxing and wrestling was struggling with pay-per-view, but it seems like because of the COVID, and yet we want to see our sporting events, the distributors might say, well, guess what? You got to put your card in before you get to see it, or you got to buy an extra year's worth of Comcast or something.
Yeah.
There's an economic opportunity here that the people that are the assholes of the world are going to try to take advantage of.
Right, exactly.
So I'm concerned about that. I don't know. Are you old enough to be concerned about those economics, or are you just going to do it anyway?
I mean, I'm much harder pressed to buy something that's pay-per-view than a lot of people my age, I would say. If it's something I really want to see, I'd be more inclined to. But man, nowadays you can log on a website and probably see it and not have to pay for it. I mean, but if you want to do it the right way, I get it. But I just think pay-per-view in sports that aren't boxing or UFC, it's just going to be a hard sell.
Yeah.
Because it's never been that way. And those are sports that have always been that way. It hurts. I think it'll hurt viewership because I do know a lot of people that would just say, all right, well, then I'm not going to watch it. And they will lose no sleep over it. Now, you will have some people that will buy it, of course. But, the majority of people, they just won't care. They're just, okay, like, fine, take it away from me, I guess. I think it'll hurt them more in the long run than it'll help them.
It's an edgy, truth be told. It's on the edges. It's on the fringe.
Yeah.
But it just keeps coming up the most unlikely times, and many times it's coming from people that are really greedy. Here's another truth be told. There's a gentleman, I think you've seen his profile before, but it's classic for me because it helps me sell this point. How long will this last? The mask up? I hope it doesn't last too much longer, but when it goes away, it needs to go away for the right reasons, that we're safe and we're back to butts in the chairs, fans in the stands, doing what's necessary. And by the way, just so you know, nobody looks good in purple or orange. Just saying. And as is always, we're streaming here at KUHS Denver worldwide. I'll tell you, we got the notes out there, both literally and figuratively. And when it comes to our Fridays at 11 o'clock, 360 Performance brings you those situations and stories about high performance. We're going to continue with our talk with Austin, but I want to just make sure that I share with you guys something that Austin's familiar with. That's AvCare and the antibacterial lotions and disinfectants they have. That's the Waltz line, the Waltz Free line, that alcohol-free antibacterial lotion. Get that stuff. I'm going to be traveling this weekend, as is somebody near and dear to Austin. We're both going to be traveling this weekend. Lather up, people! And bring your mask with you. It's not because of those around you as much as it might be because of you protecting yourself asymptomatically from someone else. So get your Waltz Free, get your Waltz D disinfectant. Contact shop.avcare.com to put in your order and make it happen. Be protected. Be safe. All right, so we are coming back to the show. We're going to stop the share. And looky there, a big full face, Austin Dunston, who is the host and creator of The Common Fan, a great podcast. I've listened to it many, many times. He gets friends and enemies alike to join his show so he can give you a perspective on sports and just being a super fan, or in his case, the common fan. I'm wondering, is there an economic divider between common fan and super fan?
Maybe there might be, but really, the common fan encompasses everybody that's not in the loop. They're not coaches. They're not paid to be there. They're people that love any sport, and they put in their own research. They'll talk about it with their friends. Essentially, that's what we try to do with the common fan. Is we try to capture just conversations that you'd have with your friends, sitting on a couch watching a game. And so I don't know if there's an economic difference between a common fan and a super fan, but we try to include everybody in our show.
That's the answer I hoped you'd give, because I don't think there should be, because I think any fan, even the fan that can't buy the numbered jersey with the autograph and the one that can, needs to be in the same stands at the same time, enjoying a good sporting event in the competition.
Absolutely.
It was also said with tongue in cheek to make the difference. But here's the serious question. We talked about the NCAA, we talked about college football, we talked a little bit about the NBA. Now let's talk about Super Bowl. What's your vision of this year's Super Bowl? How will it change, if at all, and if it does, where is it going to change?
Well, we're kind of leaking in 2020 into 2021 a little bit. And 2020 was a different year for everything. And I think that it's inevitable that the Super Bowl is going to be different. It has to be, to meet guidelines and be safe for everybody, if they are even letting fans in attendance. And I hope they let a certain capacity, like they've been able to do in some places across the country. But at this point, it's almost safe to say that it's normal for what time we're in. We've seen multiple we've seen baseball, we've seen the NBA championship with no fans. I think NHL was in there with no fans. It's kind of becoming a pattern. So it's going to be a lot like the rest of professional sports in their championships, as in there's not going to be any fans, or there might be some fans, but it's something that we're used to. These teams have been playing that way all year. The one thing that I'm interested in for the Super Bowl, it has actually nothing to do with the game. I mean, of course, I'm interested in the game, but I want to see how they handle the halftime show. Yeah. That's something that people tune into the Super Bowl just to watch the halftime show. So what are they going to pre-record it? Is it going to be virtual? I wonder what they're going to do, because there has to be something, because it's just such a staple when you talk about the Super Bowl.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I have, as you might know, I have more than a casual understanding about the technology that can be used, and some of this technology is located right in Nashville. It's a studio outfit that does digital studios, and they also do the big jumbotron score things like
right, yeah.
Like at the hot rod races. They're the ones that have the big jumbotrons at the end of the track that says who wins, that kind of stuff. Well, I'm thinking they're going to do a live streaming digital production of the halftime show. So in other words, it'll be in a huge studio, perhaps in Nashville, where they're singing, but everybody that is participating, whether they're participating virtually through the live stream or the limited number that might be in the fans, will see the live show, but the entertainers will not be on the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
They'll be in a digital studio, and that's not good enough for me.
Yeah, it's probably not good enough for a lot of people. I mean, God, I think it was just last year they had Shakira, and I can't remember who else it was, but it seems like just yesterday, but it also seems, years ago,
J-Lo.
that there were people gathered on the field. I never really understand how they do that. It's crazy to me. They set up that stage and get, thousands of people on the field and then get them off before, the teams come out to warm up for the second half. But it's just, a lot of people are going to be upset about it. And, it probably doesn't affect the people that, usually don't go to the Super Bowl, excuse me, but the people that do, there's people that love to go to the Super Bowl, and some of them go just for the halftime show. I mean, it's just going to be different, and I hope this is the only time we have to do it. But like you said, we got to make sure that we're going back to normal for the right reasons. And so I guess we're all just going to kind of have to deal with it like we've been dealing with it for the last year.
I've actually been collecting bubble wrap and connecting all the pieces. I'm making my own bubble to go to the games with. I'm going to have my own self-contained unit to transport my...
You're going to have to make me one. Huh?
Yeah, I just figure that's the right thing to do, because then and if I get it mobilized, I can actually just walk in it and go.
You need one of those hamster balls.
Yeah,
those big inflatable ones.
Yeah.
I just see you coach walking down the 50-yard line.
And I'm going to have a two-stage exchange device in that, so that they can slip my beer in there, pull their hand out. I can slip my hand in and pull. It's like the Boy in the Bubble movie. I'm self-contained. It's a fan in a stand bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good. I'm all good. In fact, I'm thinking they may reconstruct the stadiums now to take the seats out and just have places for the bubbles.
Just for the bubbles. Hey, that's an idea.
Yeah, okay, so on that humorous note, this is a great time to segue into our half hour and bring Griggs Crawford in with us. He'll be, as technology slowly brings us in, and it's coming. He may be able to hear me, but I'm not seeing video yet. Here it's coming. We're getting there.
Are you waiting for me?
I'm waiting for you. Look at that.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
That's so Californian. You know, the little gruffy thing with the plaid shirt. All you need is snaps. You just need oh, look out.
I got a Christmas card from a good friend this year, and he said, I think you're the only person to move to California in 2020.
Well, we've got Austin Dunston with us, as well as wonderful Griggs Crawford. That's who's with me now, and I'm wearing, in honor of Griggs, I'm wearing my Fairview baseball hat. This takes him back a few years. It's my way of making you humble, because you are old. Just want to say. And I can say that because I am older than you.
That's right.
And
how many logo iterations have the Fairview gone through since our days?
And colors. This is not the real red that they have now. You know, it's easy to stay black. You know, the black colors is easy, but the reds, different, skews on that one. So, Austin Griggs, Austin. And
it's nice to meet you.
And Griggs, Austin is a baseball catcher.
Operations, so I'm just iPhone might feel inadequate compared to you. But
hey, as long as we can hear you, we're getting the job done. As far as
that is true.
Excellent.
That is so true. I've preferred to go with the gallery view versus the speaker view, because I just want to see your expressions on your faces when I humiliate you. I just love. I want that instantaneous feedback. All right, guys. So let's continue with the questioning. We've gone through a whole litany of what's going on in the NCAA, what's going on in the NFL, what's going on in the NBA, as it relates to us versus them kinds of scenarios. Like the NCAA is the us to the Power Five, they, who are trying to separate themselves from the NCAA because they feel they could do better in their tournament play. Now, that's one example from what Austin and I have talked about. But I want to bring you in, Griggs, to talk a little bit about, are the social issues distractions to athletic performance and the delivery of these competitive contests? I have my own opinion. I'm interested in what yours is as a journalist. You've got that power of observation.
I would just jump back real quick to the NCAA. I might reframe that another us versus them. I would say would be who I call the unpaid pro athletes, not college athletes, and the NCAA, the powers that be. But yeah, it does seem like there's this interesting power dynamic shift to the conferences, which only makes me think that another decade down the road we'll be having the same exact conversations, but is it that the Power Five have become too powerful instead of the NCAA? Interesting stuff. I could go all down that road. I was obsessed for a time with the images and likeness debates, the Ed O'Bannon case way back when. I was a UCLA fan when I was little, so I followed that antitrust case. But to the actual question you asked me, you said, is this us versus them mentality? Sorry, can you rephrase it?
You're on track. We're swirling with these ideas that are bombarding athletes at both pro and amateur levels about social issues, and I'm wondering if it's more of a distraction than it is any kind of enhancement, or even just neutral at best, influence on their ability to cognitively get themselves engaged into delivering their athletic skills. I mean, they've got labels on the back of their helmets, they've got their shirts, they wear, hell, LeBron James crafted a black shirt with a white doily on it when RBG went down, in honor of her. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect, I want that to happen, that's great stuff. But I'm a performance guy. How does that influence your ability to deliver the goods?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would think, so right off the top, me personally, I would think, I tend to, it needs a distraction in the surface level sense. Someone tunes in and they really just want to see football and, what's this? Is this some kind of demonstration? But looking at its core, I think it's neutral at worst to good thing. I look at it in a couple of ways. One, I guess probably the most overarching things. I view our society, like pretty much every society on earth that's ever existed, is very tribal, and that's played out. Yeah, we're a tribal species. I mean, go look at a tailgate for any college football game Saturday. That, if nothing else, is sort of a tribal atmosphere. Am I in your tribe? Exactly. Am I one of you? Are you one of me? And it's kind of the same thing in politics. Frankly, the more and more I've been involved in politics, the more I think folks, it's really just a gut feeling. Is this person in my tribe or not? And then you may have a bunch of sort of defining factors for the reason you categorize yourself there. The other thing I would say is that, so in one sense, they're kind of signaling what kind of tribe am I part of, and I think that could play a positive role in terms of sort of team cohesion with the fans, and of course there's going to be your fans who don't agree with whatever the message may be, but that and that's fine. You're not going to please everyone all the time with every political message. I mean, I think that's just inherent. But the other things I would say is that you brought up that kind of us versus them mentality. What I immediately thought of is kind of anti-establishment type vibe.
Yeah.
Look at the NFL. What is possibly more sort of classic establishment than the NFL as a business entity and as the league run by Roger Goodell, this ultimate like power player creature, son of a DC senator and partner King and Spalding. I mean, so I've always had this view is like anytime, anywhere, I don't care if it's on a team that I hate, like the Raiders, if they've got some player who's like appealing something, a fine for a hit or something, I'm always on the side of the player. So that's just another thing. You get that anti-establishment vibe, and that's part of probably, I think a lot of the players, say on an NFL team, might feel that way too, and that might be another thing that can kind of create some team cohesion, which I think is kind of the one sort of broad benefit of the answer I've just given. Any thoughts or pushback?
Well, yeah, and Austin, I want to get your because we got 3 generations worth of sports fans and athletes on the show today. So, Austin, I would like your thoughts on, do you feel these are distractions, or what is the influence of the social message vibe, the consciousness of that with athletes and fans against the sport?
Well, it's a really interesting subject because it's kind of a loaded question. Depends on who you ask, really. For some people, they can go play the game, they can talk about what they want to, they can kneel, they can do all this stuff, and it won't affect their gameplay. You see other guys that, Colin Kaepernick comes to mind because it kind of consumed him, it almost seems. It almost seems that was his main goal, and he kind of fell off playing-wise. So I think that it really is a varying situation. There's some guys that can do it, there's some guys that can't. They have this big platform that they want to use, and I get. But at the end of the day, they're there to do a job, right? And I'm not saying shut up and dribble or anything like that. But I'm just saying if they can't handle the backlash that they're going to get or the praise that they're going to get, maybe they need to take a step back and look at themselves and say, is this best for me and my career, or am I willing to sacrifice my gameplay or my career to send this message? And if that answer is yes, then so be it. Go do it. That's fine. But just know that there's going to be backlash. There's going to be a consequence. It could be something good. It could be something bad. But if you're willing to take that leap of faith, I think you should go for it. So that's why I think it really just depends on the person and depends on what we're talking about. So,
Griggs, let's extend it into the economic impact. For example, manufacturing of apparel is in all parts of the world, and even the domestic companies like a Nike and others, they still job that out to foreign countries. And now with this heightened awareness about social issues, social inequality, athletes are taking heat for continuing to have a sponsor who uses child labor in the manufacturing of their customized shoes. What do you do with that?
It's a troublesome route to go down because I think, that's an easy one. In a way, we no one wants to see these factories in China making these clothes, Nike, whatever it is, for pennies on the dollar. It's not made in the U.S. But on the other hand, every single one of us who has a cell phone, I mean, there's some minerals and compounds that go there that can be only mined in places like Afghanistan and I think the Eastern Congo, where literally I think civil wars are taking place over some of these elements. And so that's in all of our pockets. So I don't know if it's the easy answer. Like, yes, you don't want to maybe know that your Nike shoes were created in child labor in the U.S. We all agree on that. Whether people want to pay 4 times more for their shoes, I don't know. These are thorny globalization type questions that have all of a sudden now made it down to the athlete level. And the only thing I just wanted to add one more thing to what Austin said, because I agreed largely with it, which is just the point that I was just going to add to it, is that, you know, you got these athletes, you got one life to live, and you've got this platform, and it's kind of like, do you want to use it or not? And like Austin said, that comes with risks. No politician comes out of the gate saying, oh, I'm going to, you know, announce this initiative or this campaign platform, and I want 100% of the population on board. You know, at best, they're aiming for 51%. So you have this one platform. How do you use it? I certainly can't blame the ones that do use it, but it's thorny. I mean, you can rail against some of the kind of labor practices going around the world with these athletic companies, but whether there's an easy solution to that, I don't know, and I don't.
So as a leader, Griggs, and I'll pass this on to Austin after your response. As a leader, then you have no choice. You have to walk into the hedgerow, the thorny hedgerow, and deal with it. Now, I'm not going to solve anything. I know that going in, but I've got to manage it for the survival and maximization of the performance of our organization and the team. What do you do? What do you do as a leader when you're faced with whether it's apparel issues or it's making a choice as, do I put something on the back of the T-shirts and the helmets, or do I not? Or if I'm going to, do I ask every player if they choose to participate? What do I do? So you're the leader, what do you do?
Can you say the first part of it again?
You have no choice. You have to walk into the thorny hedgerow to deal with the issues. You don't have it. You're the GM, you're the head coach.
Well, yeah, I think the interesting there is just look how it's evolved just in a quarter century, right? It wasn't the famous line from Michael Jordan that South Africans buy basketball shoes too, or something, talking about apartheid era South Africa. I mean, good gracious, I don't think any player could get away with saying something like that in this day and age. You know, just being that, whether they put it on the back of the jersey or not, just not being that sort of dismissive. Like, I'd like to sell shoes, you know, more than I'd like to see justice in the country. Yeah, so times have obviously changed the last quarter century, and there's this new platform. But again, I don't know, 25 years ago, all you saw of Michael Jordan is what you saw in Gatorade, Nike commercials, playing in occasional interviews. He didn't have 50 million Twitter followers. So new issues, new world, new platforms as well. But it's certainly changed, because I don't know if this, maybe it's an answer to your question. I simply do not think you could even get away with saying that this day and age.
I think in this particular question, a non-answer is an answer, because it is so convoluted. And yet at the same time, Austin, I'm going to ask from a younger person's perspective, if I have 50 million Twitter followers, I got leverage. And that means there's 50 million people who give a shit about what I say and what I present to them in product. What does a leader do from your perspective then with these issues?
Well, you know, as a leader, what you have to do is you have to stand up for what you believe in. I think you have to stick to your guns, and as a leader, you know that it's going to come with backlash. It's going, you know, not everybody's going to be on your side. Maybe like Griggs was saying, that at best you're going to have 51% of the people behind you. So all you can do now, especially nowadays, is you just have to stand up for what you think is right. And people may follow you, they may shun you, but at least at the end of the day, you can look back at yourself and truly say, you know what, that's what I believe in. And I'm a firm believer that you can't regret it. If that's something that you truly believe in and you stand up for what you believe is right, I don't see how you can go wrong.
All right, so we're using methods to communicate messages so that we can stand up, we can represent, and engage us or them, so whatever, we're able to engage. So in the journalistic world and the very challenging, competitive journalistic world of politics, Griggs, what are methods that leaders should be looking at to help them deliver their message in an effective way? Because I think, the fake news phrase is not accurate by any stretch of the imagination, but it became almost cult-like in its delivery. I mean, it's like tribal. You mentioned it was part of the tribe. They believe in it. What method should we be using so that truth is truly told, and that the messages get delivered in a fashion that they get engaged, they get heard, and then acted on in a way that's representative of the truth?
Well, I have some other folks have better answers than me on that, because fake news, talk about something that's been co-opted. I mean, you mentioned my background in politics. That's, I think, part of the reason why this is tough for me to answer, because the more and more I looked at the 2018 cycle going into the 2020 cycle, is like, man, it is hard to break through message-wise. Social media is a cesspool. The news, people who don't like it literally just call it fake news. And I came to this conclusion that I worked for Democrats in my political career. The Democrats shouldn't even talk about issues. We can debate the Green New Deal or whatever down the road. What we need to put every cent and every resource into is voter engagement. Go out, get out the vote, GOTV stuff, fighting for it in the courts, and just getting the mass of your tribe out there. Sort of skipping the message part. That said, I've spent most of my career, whether it's in the public affairs, government world, or in the campaign world, working on messaging. And it's usually how to make something that's a complicated or a little bit more of an esoteric issue, something that's palpable or understandable to the everyday public or the lawmaking public, what it may be. But I've watched the same events unfold over the last couple of weeks as everybody else, and I don't know. I don't know how you get the message through.
Well,
I really don't.
Here's what really baffled me with all the sophistication we have in social media platforms. A message that was very powerful, that got people to take action in a very directed and powerful sense, was over a microphone, outdoors, in a live setting. Trump spoke on a microphone, on a stage, in a moment, and something happened.
We'll talk about tribal, talk about feeling like you belong to a part of the movement. People from your tribe. I'll try not to keep going back to that, but yeah, I mean, there is something to be said in the age, we're the information age, allegedly, and that there's never been more misinformation out there. But those Trump rallies, there was something that clearly connected. He was able to tap into something. People talk about the white grievance politics, all of that. But I think you make the most important point about the venue. Let's not count that out. The power, the sheer force of crowd energy, and feeling like a guy who's saying something that you maybe always had thought to yourself but never heard someone say out loud. All of a sudden someone's saying it out loud, and there's 10,000 other people around you cheer. That's pretty, whatever the message may be, and whatever eloquence he's using, or lack of eloquence he's using to deliver it, that's a pretty powerful setting to receive it in, and that can't be underestimated.
Austin, is that the only thing that works with the younger crowd? Is that palpable connection in an audience, in a crowd, that kind of tribal sense of being part of something? Or am I missing other communication styles and tools that we should be using to get your attention, engage people?
Well, I think the thing that my generation really clings onto is relatability. If something is relatable, or somebody can relate to us in any sort of way, we're more likely to, follow that person on Twitter or agree with their message. It's the people that, that's kind of what I go for with the common fan as well, is because we try to be as relatable as possible. Yep. And so I think if you can have a relatable message and get it out there, And like Griggs was saying, if we can hear, somebody say what we've been thinking all along, we're going to say, oh, okay, well, maybe it's okay to voice that opinion. Maybe it's okay to get behind this or get behind that or do this. I think it's all about relatability. And if you can be relatable, you can spread your message and influence my generation.
So if I can hear the echo, I have the power to speak. Is that what you're saying? If I hear the echo, I have the power to speak and repeat.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the power to speak. I'd say if you hear the echo, you have the power to rally.
Gotcha.
You can speak your mind, but if you're hearing somebody saying what you've been thinking, you're going to rally behind that person.
Gotcha. Griggs, you were saying?
Yeah, and I would, I think that's a great point Austin made, and what I would add to it, it's kind of a subset or corollary to the relatability is, you go back to those classic elements of like what makes good, compelling storytelling that gets someone into a story from Act 1 to Act 5, and usually, it's rising action, it's all these things, but also conflict. Conflict makes any story, any main character has to make a decision, and it just so happens that when you are sending and receiving a political message, it's Fox News found this out 20 years ago, that when you have a boogeyman in a conflict that people can rally around, that kind of makes this kind of cohesive glue that can bring your audience together or make them just more rabid.
I like the fact that you brought up an old school term, boogeyman. I like that. That makes me feel really good right here in my heart. The boogeyman. But you both are making the relatability, the having something tangible to attach yourself to. If somebody else is hurting, I want to hurt with you, and we can hurt together. The same thing with hopefully more smiling than hurting, but nonetheless, the common causality of our interactions. As we get close to the end of the show, I want you to both think about what's the takeaway for anybody when they find that relatability with someone, that causality that connects them to a mission. Should we encourage them to evaluate it before they take action, or should we just say, go with the gut, just rock it, just get on your horns and grab your spear and paint your face and get after it? You see what I'm doing there? That image? Okay.
Well, in my opinion,
we know what his answer was.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with pro athletes, and is it affecting their play? When what I said was you have to stand up for what you believe in and know there's consequences. So I think that what you take away from this, though, is that if you're having a thought, right, and you want to voice that opinion, you have to know that the odds are there's a bunch of other people that think the same way as you. And you will probably have somebody to back you up. And of course, there's cases where no one agrees with you, and I'm not saying that everybody's always going to agree with you, but the odds of you having an idea and thinking that, I'm the only one in the world that has this idea or this opinion, it's just not true, because for every one person that has an idea, there's two others that have that same idea. On the other hand, there's also 4 other people that have the opposite opinion. I mean, you're never going to please everybody, but I think what you take away from this is that you're probably not the only one thinking this way, so you need to surround your people or surround yourself or rally around people that have the same ideas as you, that push the same ideas, because they're out there. You just might have to search to find them.
Yeah. Griggs, what do you think?
And for me personally, I'm kind of someone who would say, oh yeah, you got that feeling in your gut, go out and act on it. But I think in the context of this conversation, almost have to pump the brakes a little, because when we say, when Austin and I talk about that relatability, let's not forget, it can cut both ways. QAnon shaman with the horns and stuff, those types of people felt relatability with what was around them, and they probably could have benefited a little bit more from thinking before acting instead of jumping into the mob mentality. So context is obviously everything, but I don't know, maybe I fancy myself more of a go like the, get that fire in your belly, go and act, but in practice I'm more of a conscientious, go home and stew on it and then come up with my full outline game plan from there.
That was actually an issue that I had to have with you on the mound. I would have to say, get out of your way and throw the ball, would you? Just throw the damn pitch. Stop thinking about it.
You don't need, you don't need an outline to get from pitchers bound to home. A writing teacher told me once, to get from, talking about writing a book, to get from New York to San Francisco, you don't need headlights that go from coast to coast.
You gotta write that one down and put it on a poster. I like that one. That's a good one. Well, guys, as we have about 3 or 4 minutes left in the show, I wanna share with you some thoughts I have about your participation and what the rationale was for this show, and remind our audience that we're here every Friday, 11 a.m., streaming with KUHSdenver.com. And in doing that, we try to bring you focus on performance. Now, us versus them, that's one of our themes today, but the performance is about you making choices. And both Austin and Griggs pointed out relatability, find a cause, attach yourself with that, surround yourself with like-minded people. And those are performance parameters. It's hard to take action totally on your own if you haven't had a body of folks around you that give you the strength, the capability, and the roadway to take off. You need that around you. Even though the sport, the activity may be just you. You're the one running. You're the one wrestling. You're the one skiing. Even on a team, you're the one blocking. And yet you're part of 10 other people. You've got to make those choices and make them clearly and quickly so that you can resiliently be able to ascertain obstacles in front of you and adjust and adapt. So for me, I'm concerned about the adjusting and adapting capability of anybody, whether they take action right off the bat from what they hear and talk about, or they find out with a pattern pace those who are relatable. In either case, you've got to make a choice that fits you and then live with it, own it after it's done, regardless of the consequences, which is another concern of mine. I don't think there's a lot of people taking ownership of their actions in the last 30 days. And there may not be enough of them taking ownership in the next 300 days. But I want to see that change and happen. So with that being said, gentlemen, give me your send-off with your experience from today to our audience in about 60 seconds or less. Go ahead, Griggs.
There's a lot of things I want to get on my mind, but I will say one thing that maybe doesn't tie quite in today's theme, but I was a little nervous before getting on the air with you, so what did I do? I did some great breathing exercises this morning here, and a lot in from guitar to things I wish I knew back when I was on the pitcher's mound to giving a radio interview. Breathing is central to so much that we do, and whether it's competing or communicating. So that's one thing I know you and I have talked about before in the past, and I think it helped me bring my most lucid thoughts here to the conversation.
I love when Griggs Crawford is lucid. I love it. Makes my day. Austin, what's your thoughts in 60 seconds or less that you want to leave our audience with?
Well, I want to say that the moral of today's show really is kind of stand up for what you believe in. It can be scary. You can have differencing opinion. That's okay. I mean, a lot of people, they say, "Oh, well, your opinion's wrong than my opinion's," but it doesn't matter. Your opinion, if as long as you stand up for what you believe in and you believe in what you're speaking, you can't go wrong. I mean, people can tell you you're wrong. That's fine. But I think at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. So you need to make a decision that's going to be best for you. Stand up for what you believe in. And at the end of the day, if you're happy with yourself, that's really all that matters.
I'm loving it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your closing remarks and your contribution to today's show. Remind everybody, we're on Spotify, 360 Performance. Just check it out, as is The Common Fan. Check us both out on on Spotify. This is 360 Performance on KUHSdenver.com every Friday, streaming to you. Have a great day today. Talk to you soon.